Let's Lacrosse is Fairleigh Dickinson.
So fun. I hate to take. That's so bad.
Problem is, not every team is Hobart.
I don't know. There's something like off with Duke that I still can't wrap my mind on yet.
If Logan McNaney wins the Tour-a-ton, I will never do this podcast again.
Welcome back. Episode 6 of the Mitchell Pehlke Lacrosse Show on TLN. We're back virtual for the boys. We're getting it going. We got Dukes, we got Dr. Kevin, and we got Hoagie. We got a packed episode. We're talking D1 Lax. We're doing Mitch's mailbox for quite some hot takes, start, bench, cut, and so much more. Dukes, how are you doing?
I'm good, Mitch. Congrats to your Ohio State Buckeyes. I want to be the first to congratulate you.
Nice guy.
At this point, I think the Buckeyes are 6-1.
Yep.
6-1, hang the banner. Haven't seen a start like this to the season in a long, long time. Some key wins against some key programs. I'm so happy for you guys.
I appreciate that. You know, as a guy that went there, loved his experience. Same thing with James Hogan. I appreciate that. But I think let's dive right in. Talk about the Super Bowl of college lax so far. Maryland versus Notre Dame. Let's just talk atmosphere real quick. I mean, watching that game. We need more other venues than just college lacrosse stadiums, and we'll get to that soon enough on Mitch's mailbox. But Hoagie, take us through your initial thoughts going to that Maryland-Notre Dame game.
Yeah, I mean, that was awesome. First off, like you said, we need more games and atmospheres like that. It almost felt like a championship weekend level type experience. It was sick. They did the full 9 yards. Lax-only lines on that field. No faded football lines here. They weren't messing around, but no, the game was just as good. National championship rematch, the last 3 national champions. And a statement, quite frankly, by the Terps coming out and winning that game. I was really impressed about a lot of things that they did. Mainly, people will probably talk about another Tillman masterclass coaching and the defense being good as well. But Logan McNaney, Mitch, me and you have talked about him for how long, about how underappreciated we thought he's been or maybe forgotten over the years, making key save after key save, especially at the end. Those 2 denying Chris Kavanaugh and then that kick save with 20 seconds left to win it. But for me, one of the big things I saw, too, was the emergence of Eric Spanos on the offensive end of Maryland. Has been awesome to see. Kind of a big recruit coming out of high school. Played a little midfield, kind of finally getting his chance to be that star. Big goal, I think, at the end of the first quarter there. Had a couple big goals to route. Him, Daniel Kelly, the whole cast. Great win for them, and I think they're going to keep rolling. What are they, 3-0 against the ACC now, maybe? 2-0? So I'm excited to see him.
2-0 so far with a chance to go 3-0. I actually predict that they will be the only team that goes undefeated against ACC opponents this year. Their only one they got left is Virginia. At Virginia, I think they win that game.
Okay, interesting. And we'll hop into more of the Virginia action as we kind of chatted about them last week. But this game really kind of showed, like, in my opinion, it's still Notre Dame, Maryland, then there's a big gap. And we can kind of chat on what that looks like. Dude, 'cause I see you nodding your head. You look just fantastic with that backwards hat. What are you feeling?
Dude, it's Notre Dame and the only thing. Yeah, Maryland won because of the score. The real winners were us, the fans, because we're so lucky that we are able to get this rivalry in a sense. I mean, you call it what you will. In the past 5 years, this rivalry has been growing and emerging. You see great game after great game. They delivered again. The only dud there was the national championship game against one of the most historic teams of all time in last year's Notre Dame team. Coming back this year, McNaney played his absolute balls off. He played so good. It was so cool. What is he, like 27 years old, dude? Dude, as a Maryland, I wanted to even say hater. I'm a Notre Dame fan. As a Notre Dame fan, McNaney, get a job, dude. Like, just go into the league. You're like 27. You're terrorizing me for year after year. But seriously, hats off to him. He made some great saves at the end of the game, and that's what you get when you have a 6th-year All-American goalie in net. He's going to step up in big games.
And we kind of chatted about that too, right? I think it was his his true senior or true junior year he tore his ACL.
Yeah, like 7 years ago.
Everyone forgot about it. I grew up playing Sweet Lax with him, and I knew exactly who he is. And I feel like every year at Maryland, when he was in net, I remember was it our senior year, he got hurt. And I remember going into playing them, being like, there's an actual shot that we could actually win. We ended up losing by 1. And he is so good. If he continues to play like this, are we going to see the first ever Tour-a-ton award go to a goalie?
I think it would be tragic if it doesn't go to Liam Entenmann last year. Like, if it didn't go to him last year, I hope it never goes to a goalie.
Yeah.
I would say this. I would pretty much, if Logan McNaney wins the Tour-a-ton, I will never do this podcast again.
But if we don't see a true offensive guy, a defender's not winning, we hate to say it, we don't see a true offensive standout.
Give it to Tillman then. Give it to the iPad. Give it to anybody.
Give the iPad.
If the iPad won the Tewaaraton, I'm not even kidding. It's probably more deserving. Like exactly what Kev said. It's no disrespect or an indictment on how good or bad McNaney is. If you're looking at a historical goalie like Liam Entenmann being arguably the best player on the best team, I mean, you can make the argument that Pat and him should have won it together. But the fact that we didn't see Liam win it next year and then it to go to McNaney, I don't know, man. That would be corruption. Corruption at the highest level.
Maryland's
100%.
also been in the national championship game every single year that Logan McNaney has started in net, which is crazy to think. The only 2 years was his freshman year, Mitch, with COVID. Season canceled, so no championship. And then they lost to Army in the first round the year that he tore his ACL earlier in the year. So the other 3 years, they've all made the championship game, including one national championship victory. So he's kind of been like that key in that steady state that Maryland's kind of had on this run. Obviously, you can't call it like a dynasty because they only won one championship. But if you look at kind of that class of like 5 or 6 years they've been on, that great game with Virginia in the championship game, they won a championship. They've been in a championship last year. He's kind of been that one steady rock. I'm interested to see next year, once he's kind of gone and graduated, how Maryland kind of is able to rebound and refill like that kind of load. But I mean, McNaney year after year has just made such timely and key saves. He's not making the saves that you're putting on TLN that are going crazy Sports Center top 10. He's making that timely save mid-second quarter to keep a goal off the board, mid-late third quarter to keep the lead to 1 instead of stretching the lead to fall behind 2. Stuff like that you don't even notice. He makes those plays every single year, and he's been doing it for so long.
Hogan, going back to what you said, by the way, when you're like, I wonder how they'll do next year without him. They'll be in the Final Four. You'll just look up. It'll be an All-American goalie, and they'll be fine. And they'll be 5-0, a 1-goal win against Notre Dame, and we'll be here saying the same things next year.
It'll be the same thing of some cat you saw in high school swagged out, then he's in like the traditional Maryland fit, and you're just like, that guy looks like everyone else.
Can I touch on something really quick going off that? We'll get into Duke and what they did over the weekend as well, but I saw Eric Molliver, and I didn't realize he's number 0 at Duke, right?
Think so.
So I'm watching the game, and I look up number 0 Duke, and I'm like, wow, this kid looks so swaggy. Like, who is this? And I see it's Molliver, and I was like, yo, it's literally me and Mitch's theory puts the test. I was like, this kid looks stocky and jacked. And meanwhile, like last year at Maryland, I was like, this kid's a little twerp, not a turf.
But I think Maryland, though, has a type of swagger to them and how they play. And
it's
like
their fit, their style.
Like, their style. Like, you see Daniel Kelly when he scores a goal, like, and even Spanos, like, they're juiced, they're waving to the crowd. Like, Maryland has their own unique, I want to say, kind of swagger that they play with that I think is so unique and so cool as well.
No, the glazing is crazy. No, we're not going there. Their swag is no swag. Like them not having
their swag is definitely no swag, but it's
that's swag in a way, right?
Yeah, they're almost a cocky swag where they're like, we're so good and we're good enough that we don't even need to do anything crazy because we know how good we are. We know we're going to beat you, and we know we're going to win every game.
I mean, literally, look at the helmets. They're wearing like all just plain black helmets.
It's kind of like their swag is no swag, kind of like them not collab posting with TLN. Like just no swag, just like not even needed.
Yeah, no,
you don't have to call them out like that.
I mean, you're saying no McNaney saves make it onto TLN. I mean, you see TLN catching the Twitter guys are going at them, being like, they keep doubting us, keep picking against the Terps.
Like you talk about storylines and media, like they're not a flashy team either. So like in the same respect, like you see Chris and Pat do all these crazy things. Like with Maryland, they just put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, you wouldn't catch me dead taking Maryland with against the points anymore.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Never doubt 100%. The Terps. Never doubt the Terps.
I mean, if we talk about the atmosphere though, real quick, 10,000 plus fans, unreal. I mean, you guys were watching the game, obviously. Just from watching on your couch, I wish I was there. The weather looked great. The atmosphere looked super sweet. And again, we'll get into it, but I just hope this becomes a standard where different big college games are held at awesome venues. And we can obviously talk about UVA and Towson being in Houston this weekend, but it's just unreal.
Yeah, and I think the best part of these neutral site matchups, especially when it's 1v2, like how often do we get a game in March where it's like one team beats another team, but you're like, oh yeah, but they had to travel for that. They had home field advantage. I love that both teams are on equal footing. It's like a little mini national championship when it's 1v2 at a game like that. So we can draw legitimate conclusions in my mind.
100%. I like it. I think, for you guys, Hoagie and Dukes, what are your guys' thoughts on the initial, different venues? Are you a fan or not really?
Hoagie, I'll go first on this. I do think that first off, going to a non-traditional hotbed like Atlanta and hosting an event like this and seeing the turnout is just great for the sport. On TV, I was at a bar watching the game with actually it happened to be where Notre Dame alumni were. So from my perspective, it felt like a big time game. And then hearing it on TV, it was like every TV was bumping. It was like you're in the middle of New York City. There's Notre Dame, Maryland on. Every screen's on. The sound is on. That's unheard of during March, during the college basketball slate. So that it was just had a big time field all around for me. But even when they go to Long Island and it's Cornell, Notre Dame last year, those games get a big time atmosphere as well. But just seeing this being at a place like Atlanta is so cool.
Yeah, that's what I was going to kind of touch on, like Dukes was saying. Obviously, this weekend's game was awesome. Like I said, lacrosse only lines, championship weekend type feel, great crowd, 10,000. I don't know the numbers for other regular season games, but 10,000 has to be close to the top of what we've gotten in recent years for a regular season game. I don't love personally the games when they're at a random high school field. I don't know. That's just I would like to see more games at a place kind of like Georgia Tech or a cool venue outside of a hotbed area. I agree, Dukes. The crowd is awesome when they play it at Garden City High School and have Penn play Duke or something like that. I don't know. I just feel for a growing the game atmosphere and overall just a championship weekend type feel, having it in more of a place like Georgia Tech for me is something that I would rather see more moving forward than having it at just random high schools across the country.
Respectfully disagree because it's when you are in the hotbeds and a bunch of your when a bunch of your players are from Long Island and you're going to Cornell and it's Notre Dame Cornell. No offense to Ithaca, New York, getting a contingent from outside of New York City to take a coach bus up to Ithaca, New York is not realistic. It gives this atmosphere at these high school fields. Now, as the TV viewer, yeah, I think you're a little cheapskate. It's a weird atmosphere to look at, but to actually be on the grounds for it's very cool. And again, I think we've talked about it a lot, but being at smaller venues that you pack out, I think is cooler. And you saw it with Georgia Tech, filling up one sideline is very, very cool. So yeah, go if you're gonna replicate Atlanta everywhere else, doing it in Houston, Texas, do it wherever. Do it wherever the sport will grow.
Yeah. Huge difference for the viewer on television is the fact that this was on linear TV on ACC Network. If you remember a couple of those neutral site games, if you weren't there, if you were watching on TV, I get what you're saying, Hoagie. It was not a great experience.
Right, and going to the games like I did, it was way better. But
do you think though a game like that caliber in that stadium should have been on an ESPN? Anything of that sorts? I mean, I feel to get a game like that just on ACC Network, I don't know the exact logistics of what that takes, but I feel they're doing a little bit of a disservice there.
We're talking we've been talking about practicality a lot, and I don't like being practical, but it's March 3rd right now, so that game was March 1st.
Yep.
In the middle of college basketball season, you're never going to override it a Houston, a Kansas, any of these teams.
Yeah.
For the number 1, number 2, it was just sad.
Mm-hmm. And Dukes, Hopkins and UVA were playing on ESPNU at the same time. So let's not be let's be thankful. We had 2 linear TV games on at the same time this week.
Right. And again, when we're talking about brands, when you're trying to schedule these games earlier in the season, when Virginia and Hopkins sticks out on the schedule, that kind of sticks out more than probably Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Brand wise
for sure, and especially in the sport of lacrosse. I think for you guys, Notre Dame dominated the X. I think we all saw that. Do we think that's a big concern for Maryland moving forward and something that could potentially hinder them from making a run deep in May?
I definitely think that is a concern for sure. If you look at the numbers, straight up the number of statistics, you'll say, wow, Maryland was facing off at over 60% through the first couple weeks against good opponents. But when you really dive deep and watch the film of the actual face-offs, I think they're going to have a lot of trouble moving forward against guys like Will Lynch, which could be a big Achilles heel late in the year because of how I just think the two between Keithler and Crater, neither of them has really been able to take over kind of that starting role. It's going to be more by committee. Keithler is more of a small, stronger, stockier kid. And then Sean Crater is more of an athletic guy. He's played some offensive midi, not as much this year, but I know he played offensive midfield in high school and has been getting some reps there in practice over the years. So that's definitely a concern for me moving forward is Maryland's faceoffs. Although the numbers look great on paper, if you really break down the film, I think it can be a concern long-term.
Yeah. I think, keep going, Dukes.
I don't know how big of a concern it is when, in my opinion, you went up against the top guy. It's not like every weekend they're going to be playing Will Lynch.
Will
Now,
Lynch, yeah.
taking that away from this game only, again, you know way more about faceoffs, Hoagie. Like, I'm not even going to touch about what I've seen on the film. I just saw wins and losses. I see, like, they might have to do it as an entire unit, which I haven't taken as much of a look at, but I will be interested to see how they match up in the next couple of weeks and something to keep an eye on for sure.
Also, Maryland was so good in transition and quick restarts. They got so many gray area goals, and they even had a shorthanded goal. You know, like they just pushed transition way better than Notre Dame did. And I feel like that's a way they can make up for that maybe deficiency at the X.
Yeah, not only too did they make up like that man down goal, but also that quick restart goal as well. I think too, when you look at the top of the field though, like let's talk about the other contenders, right? Cornell's, Princeton's, they've struggled at the face-off X this year. The only real other top contender I see that has a face-off guy that I'd be concerned about is Carolina with Wambach. But other than that, I think Maryland's going to be fine the rest of the way just because a lot of the top contenders that are there, really 1 through 7, don't either have this crazy elite face-off guy. So, yeah, could it be a concern moving forward if they had to play a Carolina or a Notre Dame moving forward? Of course. But I wouldn't be too concerned about it. And you know, you have Logan McNaney, who you think is going to make good saves for you, who can kind of bail you out a little bit. Because sometimes you have a great face-off guy, but your goalie's not having it either. They'll be fine. Not too big of a concern moving forward.
To do it against Notre Dame, who I think is the most well-balanced team. I mean, them and Maryland, if you had to put a gun to my head right now and say who's going to win the national championship, I'm taking Notre Dame, Maryland against the field.
Yeah.
I'm so confident.
That was my next question. Are we going to see a rematch?
I don't want a rematch. I mean, just in general,
Really?
I feel like – I just feel like sequel stick. Were you stoked to watch the Eagles and the Chiefs play in the Super Bowl again? Or how about the Chiefs and the 49ers the year before that?
Yeah, the last bat in you just comes out and bang, I like that.
I do got to be honest. I don't even think it's comparable though to like
really?
The Chiefs are a dynasty. We're not really looking at a dynasty yet. Like Notre Dame is going to go for the dynasty. Sports live for dynasties. We all act like we don't like watching the Chiefs, but like this was the first year that there's any ever sickness of it. I think if they played in the national championship, it would be the best thing for the sport of lacrosse.
I don't know. I think UNC, Hopkins, Cuse, or even Army would be way more excited.
What are we talking about? Army and Notre Dame would get like 10 people to watch. Nobody would care. We're talking about two of the preeminent franchise programs, and one's going to be going for a three-peat. We're going to get.
You don't think people would be jazzed for Army in the national championship?
Nobody would care.
I don't think so.
No, it would be a TLN admin that would be pumped. Like nobody else would be.
You're either
I think it's cool from a brand perspective. Like obviously, Army's Army, but I think to get more, I think at the end of the day, it's got to be a blue blood, and obviously Maryland, Notre Dame.
Hold on, and it's also one of those things in March Madness when like we see like Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue. We're like, oh, this is cool. Oh my God, St. Peter's is in the Elite Eight, and then they get mollywopped by UNC, and nobody wants them in the Final Four. And once we see like the 11 seed in the Final Four, it's like I don't want to watch them. Actually, it was a cool story that always goes by.
Why are you so high on the Army take?
Army is like Army and Navy, both of them. Like you don't have to have any connection to either one. Comparing them to Fairleigh Dickinson is
that's
straight up blatant disrespect.
That's lacrosse. That's lacrosse's Fairleigh Dickinson.
No, it's not. I'm not even close. No,
that is wild.
That is you should.
That would be a Cinderella story. We talk about Army every year. Like, they can't even get an auto. They can't get an auto. They can't get an auto bid.
Dukes to call Army. To call Army, who was in the quarterfinals 2 years ago, was #1 in the country at one point last year, and then is now top 5 in the country. Fairleigh Dickinson basketball is
we all like these Cinderella stories until it comes time. We're comparing Army, Notre Dame to instead of Notre Dame, Maryland is crazy. Yes, in that sense, it's Fairleigh Dickinson. College basketball also has 356 teams, not like 25 teams that always make the tournament. So it is comparable. You can't compare it with the amount of teams.
Any Army men's lacrosse players watching, please head over to Dukes on Instagram and just light them up with a DM. Say with your chest, okay?
Yeah.
Fairly.
That was crazy.
That could have been that's going to go down as a Hall of Fame take. That's up there with
you guys are blowing this way out of proportion. That I'm saying like they're comparable. I'm saying
they are comparable.
Cinderella story wise. Yes.
But they're not a Cinderella.
They're not a Cinderella, Dukes. They just went down and beat down Yale. I know Yale's bad, but Yale's been a prominent program in the country for how many years?
Rewind to last week. I love Army this year. Rewind to last week after Yale. I said I love Army this year. I think
how
that
do you call him a fucking or a fairy tale?
All I'm saying is the fact that we're saying we want Army instead of Notre Dame and Maryland is crazy.
Saying that we want Army,
it's not a
We're saying that if Army made a championship, that's equivalent to like a 16 seed beating a 1 seed.
UMBC over UVA 10 years ago, Richard. It ain't happening.
I even said 11 seed. Yes, it's like VCU making the Final Four. Yes, that is it. It's like VCU making the Final Four.
I don't know. Chat, let us know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with Dukes. But I think, we all are kind of, in shambles with that, but we all have to be in the same page with Duke or Notre Dame and Maryland are 1 and 2. And I want to put this out there. Are we all on the same page? I kind of feel Dukes isn't, that Maryland's 1 and Notre Dame's 2.
I mean, are we basing it off what we've seen this year or what we've seen out of Notre Dame the past 2 years? Because Princeton and Cornell have objectively better resumes than Notre Dame this year.
So give me your top 4 right now, Kev.
If I had to rank them, and now I am basing in a little bit of what I saw the last 2 years from Notre Dame, but Maryland, Notre Dame, Cornell 3, Princeton 4. If we're just going off what we've seen since February 1, though, Notre Dame is definitely below Cornell and Princeton, what they've done this year. Cornell is undefeated, 4-0. Notre Dame has a loss. Princeton has 3 wins against the top 10. Notre Dame has 1 good win, at Georgetown. So Princeton, they have the same loss. They both lost to Maryland. Why doesn't Princeton get more credit for going down to North Carolina and beating UNC and beating Duke in a weekend? Notre Dame hasn't done that. They played Cleveland State to start the season, and who is their other
Marquette?
2 cupcake wins. I'm sorry that.
Talk that, Kev.
And if I'll go a little further, but honestly, we talked about Maryland's concern after that game. If I'm Notre Dame, I have a bigger concern because I'm wondering who's my QB1. Because Chris Kavanaugh wasn't what Pat Kavanaugh was in the national championship last year when he had 6 assists. You could look at Chris Kavanaugh's final stats and he had 4 goals. Great. But the entire starting attack only had 1 assist in the game. And the offense just did not click. All of their assists came from their midfield, basically. Jake Taylor is the only attackman who had an assist. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at Notre Dame. I'm going, where's their quarterback 1? Cornell, I know who their quarterback 1 is. They've got C.J. Kurst. Princeton, they got the Coulter McAfee, Nate Kabiri duo. That's a nice little dual quarterback situation. Is it good enough to beat Maryland? Clearly not. But neither is Notre Dame's. I think if you're looking at a QB1, the only team that has a QB1 who could maybe beat Maryland, it's C.J. Kurst and Cornell.
I mean, if you're calling C.J. Kurst a QB1, Chris Kavanaugh had more assists than him last year. Chris Kavanaugh had 37 assists. C.J. Kurst had 22. They have the same amount of assists this year as well. Now, I'm not leaving what you're taking is yes, Pat Kavanaugh was obviously at this point of last year a better quarterback than Chris Kavanaugh. But also, I think assists are one of those things that's I'd have to go back and rewatch this film, which hand up, I haven't done. But did Chris Kavanaugh have any passes to the crease that just got missed? Assists are more than just I don't think box scores always tell the full story.
I did watch the game last night just for this reason, and he had 3 passes to the crease that were off target, by my opinion. He had 4 turnovers total, which I think were canceled out by his 4 goals.
Yep.
And his 1 driving goal was outstanding. But ultimately, you got to make all the other players better on the field. And I'm not sure Chris Kavanaugh did that against Maryland.
100%.
I do think he will, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think too.
He's not going to play Maryland every week, too.
But, right, exactly. That's what we're saying about Maryland's face-off. You're not going against Will Lynch every week.
But we're also everyone knows Chris Kavanaugh is a fantastic player. He does not have the same caliber of Pat and Dobson and the guys last year to make these assists happen. So essentially, he does have to create more and have to be that quarterback. But from the assist-centric talk, I feel like it's not even comparable to last year with the talent he had around him.
Mitch, we talked about with you and Kev down in Hofstra last year. I remember we talked about Chris kind of having to become that quarterback role for this year. And we even spoke about that the other day, Mitch, on the phone about kind of he has to step up and be that quarterback, right? Be what Pat was, be what Connor Schellenberger has been, and be able to just be at this moment, I need you to make a play, whether it's a score or not. I feel like Chris personally still is growing into kind of that role. I think he's had the ability to be that secondary guy to Pat all these years, going back to probably high school, youth, all that stuff. He's always used to being Pat was always so smooth at working for Max, dodging, kind of feeding him, and Chris knew where to be. So I think Chris is still growing into kind of the quarterback that he wants to be. But it is a concern watching the film, seeing that. I feel like they didn't really have a guy offensively, Notre Dame, who, to me, I need a goal right now. Like, Chris, to me, wasn't like a take it and get it done right away. He would have to cut off the backside or a couple other things go your way to get that done, in my opinion. So that is a big question mark going forward for Notre Dame. Who is going to initiate that offense and really be that party starter week in, week out in the 6-on-6 set?
I mean, they also had a shit ton of success last year sweeping across the middle out of their midfield unit. And I mean, you saw them do it at the end of the game, and they got a great look from Chris on the backside. I mean, we're talking about Notre Dame, like, resume is leading up. Princeton, same loss as Maryland. Sure, but if you watch that Princeton-Maryland game, you watch that Maryland-Notre Dame game, you know that those are two way different losses.
Yeah.
We're talking about we're a one goal stop away, a kick save away from potentially Notre Dame going to overtime, not knowing what happens. We're talking about a great overtime victory by Notre Dame. We're talking about Chris Kavanaugh, 5 goals. Is he the leader of the Tewaaraton? That's how close of a game it was.
100%.
So I think resume-wise, sure. March 3rd, if we're talking resumes, maybe Cornell is up there right now. But if you ask me who the 2 best teams in the country are right now, give me Notre Dame and Maryland.
I also think he's the best team. Also, the best thing to happen in Notre Dame, I think Corrigan in the back of his mind's kind of like, not obviously you're not happy you lost, but I feel like Corrigan wants to get one loss out of the way to really get these guys revved up, because I feel like if not, the storyline the rest of the year, can Notre Dame go undefeated? Can they keep doing what they're doing? Blah, blah, blah. Yep. And this will take a little bit of that pressure, a little bit of that talk and that monkey off their back. Is kind of now all the chatters going over to Maryland a little bit, where Notre Dame can kind of work a little more in the shadows moving forward. So I think that could also be an under-the-radar thing moving forward. Notre Dame getting that loss out of the way. I know they lost early last year, but this year more than ever, really all that hype that they've had, back-to-back championships.
It'll be interesting, and I think obviously we'll be here to kind of chat about it week to week. But I mean, we could chat at Notre Dame and Maryland for the whole entire episode. But let's talk.
Can I just say I'm sorry to the troops? I like the troops a lot. That's before we close that segment. I do like the troops.
Dickinson, Dukes.
Yes, I do like the troops. Army. I like the troops. I do like the troops.
Hey,
like, you know what? You know who's not going to clip that? Matty Ice won't clip that.
But let's talk Princeton here, 2-0. 3-0 against top 10 teams, like Kev just said. Coming into this year, did you predict that? Like, we know Kabiri, Coulter, what they have going up there in Princeton, but were we expecting 3 top 10 wins this early?
I wasn't. I mean, I knew they would be. I figured the Ivies would be a 2-horse race between them and Princeton, but they've really blown me away these first few weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, I talked about it too on Twitter earlier in the week. Going 2-0.
Hold on. Can we clap it up for James Hogan on Twitter real quick?
Yeah, James Hogan's been all over Twitter. Dude, he's a Twitter star.
It's been a long time coming, folks. He's been in the videos since 2021, and the kid's building a personal brand for himself. So I just wanted to tell you congrats.
I appreciate that. Thanks. No, but like I mentioned earlier in the week, going down to North Carolina for a weekend like that, Mitch, having been there and played, being in the hotels and all that stuff, it's a grind. They probably got there Thursday night and left Sunday after the game. So you're in the hotel 3 nights, all day. They take up all your time when you're at these away temps. It's not like you're just sitting on the couch on your phone. Oh, there's
to be honest, it's pretty miserable.
Let's go.
You wake up, you got breakfast, you come back, you're like watching TikTok for 4 hours, then you go to a shoot around. It's not fun.
And Mitch, so you know how hard it is. We know best how hard it is to win on the road like that, even on a singular game when we get there on a Friday night, play Saturday, and go home. To have to do that, to go at Duke, at UNC, 2 top 10 road games, staying in a hotel, all that film, you're eating, sandwiches down the road, the cheese is half melted, box lunches,
It's not easy.
Your body's far to your right, the pillow sucks, so it's not easy to do that. Not want to.
Mitch, we were competing for national championships year in, year out. When you guys talk about these road trips where you lose, I legitimately don't know what you're talking about. I'd be watching TikTok 30 seconds before the game and win by 20.
But let's chat Carolina though. 1-1 on the weekend, obviously. Are they still a legit contender, you think, for championship weekend?
100%.
I've been saying from the beginning, I think they're a quarterfinal team. They're what I quoted last time. They're this year's Syracuse.
Yeah.
I also think they've been good, but I want to see a true road game for them. Like, I'm not counting the Hopkins game because I feel like that was it was a half home game for the Petramala scored half the goals.
Home field is the cathedral. Dude, you cannot let that slide.
I'm on Kev's route here. because you just know Dom being on the field, Dave being the coach, it was like go time.
That actually says more to me about how emotional of a win that he handled it at going to Homewood. I mean, anytime you play at Homewood, you're going to get probably the most raucous crowd that you possibly can get to. I mean, playing at Homewood is we ranked to like the number one place to play a college lacrosse game. Anytime you go to Homewood, you can't say it's not a true road game just because you grew up going there.
It was more of a home game for Dom Petromala than anyone else on the field. He's probably been shooting around on that field since he was like 5 years old. So I don't think there's anyone who's more used to putting the ball in the net. He scored half the goals.
The guy literally stat coach there.
Yeah.
Dom knows
That is like that. If you're going to talk about atmospheres, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a lacrosse field. I mean, how big of an atmosphere are you going to get in college lacrosse besides Homewood Field? Arlotta during a spring game? Like Faulkner during the spring. I mean, you can't just say you're going to Johns Hopkins Homewood Field. That's not a true road game.
Not for Dom Petromala. And anyway, but you look, that's the only time they've left Chapel Hill so far this year. They don't leave Chapel Hill until March 21st when they go to High Point. And they only leave the state of North Carolina twice the whole year. They go to Army and they go to Syracuse at the end of the ACC.
That's kind of crazy. And now to know that, does that mess with you guys where they could be, again, deep in May?
No, because
I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if we get to that Army game or we get to that Syracuse game and we're like, whoa, they look like a completely different team because they haven't had a road trip all year, basically.
Do you think road games really matter besides just being like having to stay in a hotel room?
Yes.
I don't know. Mitch and 100%. James just made it sound like jail.
100%. No, I mean, especially, I remember vividly we played Maryland on a night game and it was a 7 p.m. Sunday game. You travel all day Saturday. Night games are the worst. You wake up Sunday, you have like breakfast at 8 a.m., and then you have a lunch at 12, and then you get ready for the game at 4. You're talking about like your whole entire day of laying in a Hilton bed scrolling TikTok.
Yeah, you're just sitting around all day long. You're literally just waiting to be like, all right, when is it 6 o'clock so we can board this bus?
They don't want you going outside, being in the sun, getting tired. They don't want you overeating. You can't do anything.
I would, but to your point, Dukes, I would say it is a disadvantage for the traveling in terms of the hotels and all that stuff. But like the actual game atmosphere,
right?
9 times out of 10, it's not that big of a deal.
There's a couple of stadiums that really stick out where I'm like, I think that this atmosphere could affect him. And Homewood playing a top 10 matchup at Homewood Field is absolutely it. You can talk about Dom Petromala all you want, shooting at Homewood Field when he's 11 years old. I'm sure that like helped his like perception on the field. But I mean, you still got to listen to that band. You still go in with all those emotions, and there's still 10 other guys on that field that had to go into that atmosphere and win that game.
He thought that band was playing for him.
Yeah, I know. Like, he's been shooting out there since he's in like 3rd grade. He knows exactly where that sweet spot is to hit a bouncer. Every spot
I can't believe you call that not a true road game.
It's a half road game. I'll give it half a road game because they only scored 7 goals, not from Dom Petromala in that game. They scored the other 6.
The craziest fact of this whole show today is UNC's leaving the state of North Carolina 2 times the whole season.
Mitch, going back to what you also said, though, like you really have one game at home, and they'll probably be home if they're on the trajectory that they're on, and then you're at neutral site. You're playing at like Navy Stadium. You're playing at Hofstra, and you go to the Final Four. So like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, and also love lacrosse, but I mean, I don't think home field advantage is like all that important.
The travel side of it is huge. I know we've harped.
I think the travel's a good. I think that's fair, but again, at the end of the day, like. You get on that field and nothing matters.
Dukes
like
too,
you're not 28 years old. Like,
dude, I don't know, man.
Mitch, you can talk about this
from personal experience. It's a dagger.
Look, Ohio State and North Carolina are 2 different programs.
Mitch.
No, I'm saying when we went down there to whoop that ass, 22-4 or whatever that was.
It was like 22-5. I will say though, Mitch, some of the locker rooms that you get put in at these away games.
You want to talk? Oh my!
I mean, you want to talk about?
They didn't have any of that product for Mitch after the game.
You're gonna have 50 guys in probably the size of Mitch's room he's in right now. Like you're built up, wall to wall. You're on the spandex for 1 sec. Someone's grabbing your shirt. You're getting poked by a lacrosse shaft. I mean, some of these locker rooms are just.
Are brutal. But let's travel down the road here to
one more. I just want to, when we talked about Princeton, because I don't know if we're going back to them. I just never really think about Princeton as a program coming into this. I think that might be my new favorite team to watch.
Yeah,
this guy's got a new favorite squad every week.
But it's never going to be. It's never going to be Ohio State. Don't worry.
We saw Providence and Brown. Oh, Providence!
Also, Shout out Matt Madeline too, by the way, and Princeton on what he's been able to build as a team and a coach and a league
Right.
who can't take transfers, fifth-year guys, and then having their star players leave and be stars at other schools like John Tafaro and so many guys year after year, and to be able to continue to reload with only being able to recruit high school kids, that has been nothing short of amazing for him.
Also, he's a legend. He's an absolute.
We'll get to Providence later, Mitch.
I want to talk about Duke.
Let's chat on Duke real quick. Let's chat on Duke. Obviously, going 1-1 this weekend, the Friday and Sunday game. What are our thoughts on them? Obviously, we chatted on them briefly, over that Michigan overtime win. But are they still kind of where we think they are?
I'm not impressed with Duke. I think we still don't know, though. We mentioned last week, I was like, I don't know what Duke is. They beat St. Joe's 11-9 and then barely escaped Michigan and then lost to Princeton Friday and then beat a Penn team. But Penn season's over unless they win the Ivy League tournament. So that win doesn't really get you anywhere. So I still think we don't really know what Duke is. They really don't have one player, in my opinion, that they look to. Obviously McAdory, but other than that, the offense is not as electric as it's been. I don't know. There's something off with Duke that I still can't wrap my mind on yet.
It's so weird because at the end of the day, they have one loss by one goal to Princeton, who we're saying is amazing, but something about just what we've seen hasn't looked great. And I feel like Duke, to me, is the anti-Maryland Terps. Maryland, you look at the roster, there's really no one that excites you, but somehow they always win. You look at Duke's roster, I see Andrew McAdory. Ben Johnston is one of my favorite midfielders to watch. I think. Legend. Yeah, and then Matt Christmas was the other one I was going to mention. 6 pole goals in 6 games, dude. And then when you watch them play, it's always a close game that shouldn't be as close as it is. So I don't know. I'm with you, Hoagie. I don't know what to make of Duke.
Yeah, I do. I think that also when we're nitpicking Duke, they won against Michigan, right? These are games that they lose, and we talk about them endlessly on these podcasts, being February Duke. So the fact that they won those games, I'm not going to harp on it too much. I did I hate how to say good loss. Program loss, but that was a good loss to Princeton. That was one of the best games I've watched all year long, to be honest. So I'll give Duke some credit. Patrick Jamison, I think, is one of the best goalies in the country. Sophomore stud. And one of my favorite players to watch in all of college lacrosse is Aiden McGuire. Yeah. And talk about a guy coming back from sixes. That's a guy when we're talking about locks and Olympic rosters. That's a guy I'm keeping my eye on. It just seems like he's the perfect player for that style. And I do want to say, I think Eric Molliver has obviously been a great pickup for Duke.
Yeah. Hogan, you kind of hit on to Penn action. You complete that thought. 0-2, obviously the Friday-Sunday matchup down south, but continue there.
Yeah, Penn's done unless they win the Ivy League. I really don't see any path to an at-large resume, barring a complete 180 of a running the table in the Ivy League regular season and then losing in the semis. But I just don't think they have it. Emmett Carroll is keeping them in a lot of games with the defense. The offense just doesn't have it. And then, I don't know. They're not a team to me that is really up there with the upper echelon of the Ivy. And I think it's pretty obvious right now the Ivy's probably only going to get Cornell and Princeton in down the line based on what we've seen so far. So I see Ivy is a 2-bid league. I see Penn having to win the Ivy to get in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. I do want to say something really quick about Penn is their defense. I still think is good. It's probably going to be one of the best defenses in the Ivy. And year in, year out, whenever you're growing up, you hear defense wins championship, but not when your offense can't score more than 8 goals. I mean, it's going to be near impossible. And you only can have so many skeins on a team. They only have one. And he puts the ball in the back of the net, but it's not enough. So,
yeah.
And again, it could be ugly without Emmett Carroll.
100%. Well, let's hit on some notable news around the Division I lacrosse world as we kind of wrap up the college segment. Cornell storms back to beat Richmond. This one was shocking. I don't think anyone saw this game really being that close. But, Kev, initial thoughts when you watched that game? Obviously, you were chatting on Cornell early in the episode. Was there any worry?
A little bit of a concern. My biggest thing is I think Cornell knows how good CJ Kirst is. Have you ever played on a team where you just have that one guy who's just a baller and you kind of count on him to carry the team? And then when he doesn't have a super hot start, it looks bad. And you're like, all right, turn it on, man. That's what they've had to do the last 2 games. They went down 7-3 against Hobart midweek, and then they end up winning 22-9. CJ Kirst has 12 points, 6 goals, 6 assists in that game. Kind of the same thing happened against Richmond. I think that CJ really respected the matchup he had, and he was like kind of buried on the crease for most of that game. Fourth quarter comes around, he's demanding the ball, taking that high wing dodge that we've seen him do so many times, gets an assist, gets a goal where he trips up the guy behind the net. That tied it up. From there, Michael Long gets the game winner. To me, it just looked like Richmond is a good team, but Cornell was just the better team. And like, also they have that potential where they can just turn it on. The problem is not every team is Hobart. Not every team is Richmond. This week they play Penn State, who they got dog walked last year, 20-9.
Penn State team.
Yeah. And so they can't start slow this weekend.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, keep going, Dukes.
I just love this Cornell team, and you're so right. I just do think that these slow starts can come back to bite them in the butt. I mean, you can't lend people these leads.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to get easy.
Richmond, too, moving forward is not going to be able to get in that large. Not that it was going to happen anyway, but, if they had stole this one last week against Cornell, having wins against Cornell, UVA, even though UVA has gone down, they still had games against Duke and Georgetown moving forward out of conference. So you could have argued potentially if they could have won one of those that they had a case in the end. But they're going to have to win the Atlantic 10 to be in the NCAA tournament. But I'll tell you what, they are a team that nobody's going to want to see in that first round of that NCAA tournament if they end up winning the A-10 and get in this thing. Because that's an easy first round upset watch if they get the right team.
Whoever comes out of there, too, you got a school like St. Joe's as well, who can really compete with you. We saw it in Durham with Duke. And just shouting out someone else on Cornell that doesn't get a lot of attention, I don't think. But, like, Hugh Kelleher, if you're watching Cornell and you know what I'm talking about, not getting in the way of someone, this guy dodges like a fullback. He's just nose to the ground, old school midfielder, dodges north-south. Love watching him play. Saw him get like a little cleanup to kind of cut the lead. He's great.
Mitch, and every single year playing Cornell, we'd always see that kid warm up and be like, "Is he wearing shoulder pads, football shoulder pads?"
He's amazing at football too on the island. Like, and he was just like one of those like family names that I've like heard, and then I was like, they have another one. I was like, is this the same family? So shout out to Hugh Keller.
We have to look this up and make sure you say he dodges like a football and you mentioned his football background. I'm almost positive he's in the portal for football.
He is.
Really?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
really.
I didn't know if he used it and came back for lacrosse though. You know how that happens. Like I didn't know if like he ended up, but he was a hell of a football player. And then speaking of another, there's this kid Jack Cascadden. He's the face-off guy. He's a Garden City kid, excellent football player. His dad played in the NFL. This kid eats up face-offs. I think he finished 70% from the X this weekend, and he can also score every time that guy is playing because he's had some health concerns. Every time he's healthy, he's good for 1 or 2 goals. He's a threat on the offensive end.
100% agree.
That's sick. Well, Hogan, you were just talking about UVA, obviously, last week, and we all chatted about them as far as where they're really going to be. But this game, I feel like, showed us a lot about UVA, or on the flip side, did it show us really what Hopkins is like?
For me, first off, Virginia coming out right from the start, to me, was awesome. Shows that they're not giving up on the season. They're coming out. It looked like Truett and McCabe kind of found something a little that they haven't had all year so far in that game. At least at the beginning. But for me, this tells me more about Hopkins maybe not being as good as we thought they are in terms of the elite of the elite. I think all year we thought, Hopkins has this amazing schedule and they have all these top 20 wins. But I don't think that they're on that level of Maryland, Notre Dame, Princeton, Cornell, even Carolina, if you want to say. I think they're just a tick below. And I think potentially their ceiling could be a quarterfinal game once again. They're just missing that pep they have on offense. They play well defensively. They play well in net. They face off fine. But they're just missing that one tick that kind of brings them into that next tier. So we'll see this weekend. The game in the Dome is going to be huge. Obviously, the rivalry. I'm rolling with Houston this weekend. Coincidentally, after last weekend, I'm taking Houston in the Dome to rebound. But
can you say that after the Miami take?
Yeah, I can take Hughes this weekend. Of course I can.
Hoagie, this podcasting Twitter business, you do whatever you want. Like,
Hughes is always good for one of those big wins to kind of reel you back in before the little downward spiral towards the end of the year. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, speaking of Virginia, I know like a lot of us said a lot last week. A lot of podcast equipment being thrown around last week. Virginia, it's not every week. Lacrosse is a small world.
Think so?
Everything that gets said on any sort of like platform is going to come back around. It's not every week that you could get some locker room juice with people telling you that your program's dead. You're going to play Hopkins, something to prove. It's hard to get up like that every single game.
The Pehlke Lacrosse show was in the speakers of Klockner.
No, but it definitely was in the dorm rooms. There was definitely clips being sent around. Same with Cuse at the Dome.
My picture might have been in the Cuse locker room last weekend. I mean, who knows? I guess we'll have to get
red X
on that with a little X through it. So I might take credit on the blowout win.
Let's chat on Hopkins UVA real quick for a tad. Again, with you said last week we don't see UVA even making the playoffs. Do you still see that trend? Obviously, with this game, again, with Hopkins, how many one-goal games can they win to continue this success? With these two teams, like I know with Hopkins records, they look great, but with the amount of one-goal games, like I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
I'm going to grab this one first. I never bought Hopkins from the get-go. I was like, it's just a lot of these teams didn't have the same opportunities Hopkins had. So I held off from buying stock. I mean, you look back at Towson, they don't look as impressive. It's not like Denver's some world beater. So I'm not really impressed looking back at Hopkins. I just think they're a good team. I think they're a top 10 to 15 team, and that's what they'll be the entire season. Could they make a run? We'll see their form later on in the year. But Virginia, how many more opportunities do they got? They just feel like they're still missing something. Like they still have they still have the top recruits. Like obviously it's Virginia. It's not like they're some club lacrosse team in Ohio. like they're the University of Virginia. So obviously they're going to have talent around the place that they could lose these close games. But I'm not going to bet Lars is a good enough coach. But I just don't think they'll make the Final Four this year.
They just don't have enough ammo moving forward.
Yeah,
they needed this game.
They're the one team out. They're the one team.
That it's a loss.
They are the one team out for me this year.
If you wanted any hope, you had to win this week.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's talk Fairfield real quick. Staying undefeated, beating Providence. Kevin, I want you to take this one. Fairfield's interesting this year.
Yeah, 5-0. There's only 4 undefeated teams left right now, and Fairfield's one of them. And I want to tell you about Julian Radicic, the best player you don't know about yet. Number 27, long pole. 17 caused turnovers through 5 games. As a freshman last year, set the Fairfield record with 27. He's going to shatter it this year. Really fun player to watch. Number 27 on Fairfield. If you're looking for a reason to watch the stats.
Mitch, you want to know something about him?
Ridgewood,
New Jersey cat, baby. Come on now.
I knew that.
Is he the Del Barton kid?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a tough one for my Friars. I mean, like, not even close. I was keeping an eye on this one. Again, this is the year before the year, but not looking good after. Like, that's a game that you got to keep close. You should be in the same ballpark as Fairfield.
100%.
So we'll see moving forward in the Big East. Let's see how Big East goes.
Fairfield too has a legit chance to run the table.
Yes,
and
go 12-2. Yeah, they can.
I said that on Twitter. They have a legit chance to go undefeated this year if you look at their schedule. I think 100%. At worst they're going 12-2 at worst.
And let's talk about another ultra hot team, Colgate. Woo! I mean, like what?
Ain't toothpaste, Pehlke. You called it toothpaste last week.
Jesus. Biggest threat to Army in the Patriot League?
I think so. 100%. Navy but right now I'd say Colgate.
Yeah, 100%. And then
there's a couple of good teams. I mean, even want me to throw an underrated team that like Lehigh.
No, I'm out on them. I
don't think so.
I don't know why you sell stock on them. I mean,
Lehigh's more Dickinson than Army is.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I mean, why are we talking about like Army? Like, when's the last time they had a Final Four? The 70s?
No. Is it? I thought back in like 2009 they beat Cuse to go to the quarters, or was that go to?
That was the first round at that was the first round at the Dome. I'm pretty sure.
Was that to go to the quarters?
Yeah, and people were acting like it was the biggest upset in lacrosse history.
Hey, relax. I thought they're going to the Final Four. It's okay.
Either way, though, Colgate's offense has looked red hot.
Let me ask you, as I pose this question: why are we not talking about Penn State? They're the sneakiest team, I think. Even though big branded school, we know the whole bit. I truly feel they're going to make the Final Four just with how low key they're playing.
Preseason, Mitch, I told you, I said that Penn State, was my sleeper team that no one's really going to talk about the entire year.
Yeah,
they're just so good. Colby Baldwin at the faceoff X, great. Frassion's been a mainstay in net. Yep. And Tambroni seems to have these guys ready every single year. Yeah. Let's just get rid of that one year where they went 3-12. and then he kind of adjusted and said, look, I'm going to take a couple transfers, added a couple great transfers. They make the Final Four. Penn State, under the radar, like Kev said earlier, blew out Cornell last year. They always seem to be right there. First round tournament game last year. You don't like them? You don't like them, Dukes?
No, I love them. I was saying this to Mitch on the podcast. Like, I think they're a Final Four team. I think Tambroni's an excellent coach. They're also a squad that gets better year in, year out. Matt Trainor's one of my favorite players to watch in the country. And I think Fracione is a legit high-level player that will probably get looks in the PLL. I think he's been one of the best goalies in the country. Steps up in big situations. They lost a one-goal game in overtime, getting a game moved indoors to Princeton.
Yeah.
They're one goal away from Kevin being like, are they better than Notre Dame?
Come on.
Well, I don't even know. Chirp. That's a legit team. I love this Penn State squad. Like,
I love it. I just love how Fairleigh Dickinson is going to be a meme in this whole show this year. I love it.
Literally.
I will say, I think if you're looking for a team in the Big Ten to knock off Maryland, we know how weirdly Michigan seems to like match up against Maryland.
Right.
But I trust Penn State way more than I trust Hopkins to knock off Maryland.
What about Ohio State? They're a Big Ten team.
What do you think, Kev?
I try to stay out of that, but
You just walked straight into that. That's terrible. We'll talk about that. That's all right. Well, lastly, let's just talk. St. Joe's Rutgers. St. Joe's beats Rutgers. Rutgers
is a disaster. Utter disaster. You're seeing the culmination of going in all in on transfers and it working for a year. So they got to a Final Four and they made a quarter the year before. Should have beat that North Carolina team, by the way, with Chris Gray. Lost in overtime. Made the Final Four last year. And I think now you're finally seeing the repercussion of the transfer portal when you take 16 to 20 guys, basically a whole recruiting class of transfers a year. It's going to mess with the team chemistry. It's going to mess with the bonding. It's going to mess with the recruiting. And I think that's what we're seeing out of Rutgers, quite frankly, right now. And it's kind of leading to where they are at the current moment of being completely non-competitive, losing to Joe's, losing to Stony Brook. Total disaster.
Yeah, and you kind of chatted on it there, just kind of wrapping up college. And I feel like, a place we need to kind of end with this segment is a legend that just retired, Chris Gray. A guy that was the NCAA all-time points leader in a career with 401, one more than Lyle Thompson. Hoagie, what was the most shocking about this for you?
I just think the time of him leaving. I don't really know too much backstory about kind of what the reason was for leaving. Whether it was work related, whether he just didn't love the game anymore, or kind of lost a little bit of that love, or, he might have a family he's trying to build. So I guess we don't really know. But kind of going off his college game, I mean, the dude was a legend, all-time leading point scorer. People want to say he had the fifth year. He only played one more game than Lyle Thompson in the end. So to me, that points record is valid. He did get an extra game, but it wasn't like he had an extra 12-game season to kind of get that done.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people
Kev will talk about it too. Can we talk about the Redwoods getting absolutely fleeced and screwed on this trade with the Atlas?
He said fleeced.
God. I mean, that's my team, my Redwoods, getting absolutely shafted. Liam Entenmann for a retired player. Oh, my God.
You're not excited about 8 games of Chris Gray and 4 games so far of Garrett Degnan? For Liam Entenmann, that sounds like a fair trade.
Now I'm not excited to try and go get CJ Curse. We're going to have to mortgage the next 10 years of picks and maybe whatever's left of the roster that another team wants.
Don't.
It's not like they draft well anyway.
Kev.
Dr. Kev.
My Redwoods are in a bad spot right now.
I know PLL free agency opened up today, so we could probably touch on that a little bit more once everything gets finalized next week. Yep. But yeah, the Chris Gray thing, I mean, there was just so much chatter about it on social media. People are like, this is what, like, I can't believe that a young player like Chris Gray, the NCAA points record, retires after 3 years. From my point of view, it's good that people give a shit that someone's retiring. There was a while where people would get drafted to the MLL and nobody even would watch a game or even care if he retired, and he just subtly would quit. Would only play a year and then quit. There wouldn't be a big announcement. So I think it's in a good spot. To anybody saying it's because of money, dude, no one knows what they're talking about. All people know is that the minimum that the last player on a roster spot will make is about $25,000. That's public information. Nobody besides Paul and Mike knows what anybody's out there. But if I had to guess, do you not think that top 10 players are going to make more than the bottom feeders on your team, you think they're making the same. If you think that a top 10 player in the league is making $25,000, I don't know what to tell you. They're definitely making more than that. To anybody that thinks that they're not is absolute insanity in my position.
And the people tweeting this are the burner account Twitters who have no idea what they're talking about. Just behind the camera, commenting random stuff. They have absolutely no idea about anything. So.
And I know there's Paul had went on Dan Arestia's podcast, shout out Arestia, last year and explained why like this can't be like public information, but like it's obviously for a reason. But if you think that the top players are making the same as rookies, you are absolute insane. Like Trevor Baptiste is making the same as some rookie coming out from Hobart. Oh, okay, buddy.
Yeah, especially Chris Gray, who's got his PLL salary and is also a number 2 pick. He's got an equipment deal and stuff. Like, yeah, he was doing all right.
Right, exactly. I just think it's crazy to say otherwise, and just because like you coach youth lacrosse in Colorado, that you think you know what you're talking about. Like, if that makes you sleep better at night, go ahead. But
yeah,
just for a couple.
Dang, I love it, dude.
Always be there. That type of stuff will always be there. I mean, at the end of the day, that is storylines. But I think it's
great. It's great, Mitch. We're at a spot in lacrosse where there's actual chatter and discussion, and people are talking about the pro game. Love it or hate it. Love it or hate it. I happen to love it. The fact that we get to talk college lacrosse, pro lacrosse, and people are actually talking about the pro game now. We're in a good spot.
Yeah, 100%. But I think that it's sad to see a legend go, but it won't be the first, won't be the last. And to kind of wrap up the college scene, next week's games we got a good slate. We got Cornell versus Penn State, Syracuse versus Hopkins, Harvard versus Michigan, Ohio State versus Notre Dame. I'm excited about. And we finish off with Yale versus Denver, which I think is going to be a tricky one. Shout out the man, the legend, Joe Tsai. Now, let's hop into an interview with Abby Bosco. We got Abby Bosco on the scene. Clap it up. Woo! We're getting it going. Is this first female virtual guest we've had? I think so. I think this is the first.
It has to be.
Abby, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm pumped. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Obviously, Champ Series ended a couple weeks ago. We want to dive into your experience there before we talk to some other things. But talk to us about the WLL. I mean, how massive are we talking for the women's side of lacrosse? Kind of give us your background. How did you really find out about the league and taking us all the way through to your preparation to obviously DC and Champ Series?
Yeah. Well, it was epic. Just, I think if I had to describe it in one word. But I guess it was around September, I got kind of a mysterious text message and, listen, you can't say anything. You're about to get some cryptic voice message. It stays between you and I until the date. And I got a voice memo that was basically like, if you're around, we want you at the closing bell, this date, this time. And honestly, whoever was involved, they did a phenomenal job of, sticking to their, whatever it was, their secrecy. But like, we didn't know. We truly were like, all right, they're going to do something. We don't really know what, maybe a league, maybe not. And then we get to the closing bell and you see all throughout Times Square, these signs, posters, WLL, Women's Lacrosse League, and that's when I think I fully realized. But I think even in that moment, I didn't understand or truly realize how big it was going to be and how epic it was going to become. And then obviously you're like, all right, let's kick it into gear. We got to do it's sixes style. I've played defense the past 4 years. I was a midfielder up until my junior year of college, but hadn't dodged in about 6 years. So had to learn how to dodge and shoot again. But I think like sixes, that form of lacrosse, speaking from the women's side, like it is unreal.
Yeah.
I think I would argue my favorite style right now, but
yes.
The event itself was just incredible. From the fans, they were outstanding. They brought the energy.
Yeah. To walk us through like the experience, I mean, we were all there for majority of the week, filming the show, watching the games. The atmosphere was crazy. And Dukes and Hogan and Kev and I all chatted. We like watching this more from the women's side than a college game. This is so insightful. I was watching a Wednesday night game. I think it was maybe you guys or the Charging. Like, I would have never thought I'd be watching a women's lacrosse game midweek, but here I am.
Let's go. That's what we wanted.
Exactly.
But, Yeah, I mean, I got so many text messages, phone calls from people who probably didn't even know what lacrosse was. They're like, "Oh, you played lacrosse in college? Great. Don't care to watch." But
Yep.
they were like, "This is the most fun thing I've ever seen. Like, I would watch this over other professional sports any day of the week." I just think the fast pace atmosphere of it, and it just go go go, and it's an hour and 15 long. It's just people loved the high scoring. It's just more exciting.
Yes, 100%.
Abby, you're headed to Japan with the WLL this month. First of all, if I told you that a year ago, would you have believed me? And second of all, what's one thing you're looking forward to experiencing in Japan the most?
Ooh, no, I never thought I'd be going to Japan. So I'm so excited for that. Very nervous about the 14-hour flight. Definitely never done anything close to that before. I've just heard incredible things from everyone who's gone to Japan for this trip specifically, just from the team that we're playing, the clinic for the elementary school. The growth of lacrosse globally and specifically in Japan is truly remarkable. And it's honestly so impressive. And the fact that they're not just playing field lacrosse, like they have a training team. They've been training for 6 months for this sixes style. So I'm just so excited to kind of experience this with them and just share our love for the sport. Because I think back to 10 years ago and the opportunities and the places that lacrosse has brought me. Like, I thought that I'd be sitting at a desk 9 to 5, maybe even later, 9 to 8, whatever, in 10 years ago. And now it's like the fact that I'm going to Japan to play lacrosse with some of my best friends is incredible.
Abby, number one, it's Dukes here. I'm the number one respecter of women. I loved what you guys did all week long.
Wow.
Mitch wasn't Mitch.
Statement. I'll just be honest.
No, I'm the number one respecter of women. I went to more games than Mitchell. He would always show up in like the fourth quarter.
Interesting. I was watching virtually because I'm a nice guy, but
Did you have the open game on ESPN Plus like me and Mitch did on the couch that night, Melks?
Look, I have to work. I have a 9 to 5. I was boots on the ground. I got up at 5 a.m. just to make the semifinals. That's the type of guy that I am. But the sixes format actually got me more into the women's college game. So I know you're in the Maryland Charm. You went to Maryland. The Maryland's men's team obviously just beat Notre Dame. Maryland's women's, it's one of the best in the country. Do you think Maryland's the best college lacrosse program overall, generally speaking?
I mean, I am biased, but even if I wasn't biased, absolutely. I think 15 national championships under Kathy Rees. Yeah, that's not a small number.
Stats, yeah, that's stats.
Yeah. Wow. And then honestly, like the men's team, I've been so impressed with, usually there's teams have these rebuilding years. They lose 20 seniors, they lose 10 starters, they rebuild, and his rebuilding year is losing in the national championship a couple of years ago. And like the way that this year I'm like, I don't know how they'll be, like don't really know. I know they lost a lot of guys, a lot of really good players, and like the fact that they just came out and beat Notre Dame, and it's just unbelievable how there is no rebuilding. Like he just
it's
reloading.
It's like a rebuild year, but it's like, people come in and out of Maryland's program, obviously, but the one consistent thing that we talk about on this podcast all the time, year in, year out, he has that iPad next to him. And that's like, there's no rebuilding when you have that iPad.
Yeah, you said drop the wooden stick.
Pick up Are you a weekly listener?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Guys, I'm a lax rat.
Yes.
Obviously, too, Maryland, obviously, we're just talking about that big win over Notre Dame on the men's side, but then flip it on the girls' side. Clemson with that huge win over Syracuse in the Dome. Clemson's undefeated, top 10. What is this, year 2, 3 for them as a program? Abby, kind of walk us through, like, how cool it is to see, like, a school like Clemson add women's lacrosse and become so good so quickly, and then now how that can be, like, a blueprint moving forward for more schools to add it and continue to grow women's lacrosse moving forward.
Yeah, I'm so impressed that it's taken them 3 years. I mean, from the get-go, they were getting top-notch recruits, but I mean, any program that's building, you're like, all right, let's give them 5-10 years, and they are definitely exceeding those numbers and those expectations. And this is the type of stuff that is growing the women's lacrosse game. Like the fact their facility, the only all lacrosse facility, millions of dollars, incredible. I mean, even just, you look at their Instagrams, their TikToks, the gear they get, the standard that they have there, and so many other facilities now too, with the Maryland one opening up and Florida State soon to be.
Yeah,
it's so cool to see how much it's growing and so rapidly. But to speak on the Clemson and Syracuse game specifically, I mean, that it was an incredible game, defensive battle. But they have I'm like excited to see what else Clemson does. I know, like you guys talked about last week with the Virginia Ohio State game, it's like, who is this more telling of, Virginia or Ohio State? I kind of think until they beat someone else now. I mean, I know they have Duke coming up, which would be Duke's having a pretty good year. And so until they beat someone else, I can't hop on the bandwagon yet, but definitely an impressive win.
Abby, I really quickly just want to ask you, I think for guys, every guy growing up like in the Northeast, Maryland, we always talk about, wow, if USC had lacrosse, they'd be a powerhouse. If Texas gets a team, they'd be a powerhouse. Women's lacrosse obviously has schools like Florida State, Clemson, USC that all have lacrosse programs. Is there one school that you think doesn't have women's lacrosse that would absolutely dominate?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just think some of those southern schools, like Georgia, Alabama, like maybe lacrosse isn't as big there yet, but like the atmosphere, the football, the basketball, all these other sports, I think they can be like a Clemson. They'd be drawing in these recruits left and right.
It's kind of crazy to think about too, with like you even saying those schools when we can't even get a USC, a Florida on the guy side, which stinks. But to go back to the Clemson piece real quick, like in your eyes, the flip from Alexis Spallina from Syracuse to Clemson and the girls that she's really brought in this recruiting class, and they'll be there next year. How beneficial is that for Clemson? And where do you see Clemson in the next 3 years? Are they really a national championship contender?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, you look from the first year that they established as a program, they had 5-star recruits, ranked recruits, and that's, they're taking them from these top schools, like your Marylands, your BCs, your Northwesterns, which like at first you're like, this is so crazy, but then you look at a moment like this past weekend and you're like, I get it. But they have their talk about another program who's just reloading with not only these top ranked recruits, but also the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So many girls are like from high level schools that were the best player on their team are like, I want to do a 5th year at Clemson.
Yes.
And like, why wouldn't you?
About the facilities and everything. That was a lot of the girls on the team. And Hogan and I played with a girl, Bryce Funstein, went to Hopkins, transferred to Ohio State, graduated, went in the working world for a year, then is now at Clemson this year.
That's crazy.
Mitch, you've also been to all these facilities, obviously, and we've been to a bunch. I'm pretty sure that Clemson facility is the best.
Yeah, it's a nice, hands down. I mean, it is the
nicest lacrosse facility in the country.
I mean, fields on the lake, their own locker room, their own fuel zone, their own AT room, their own it is the only lacrosse only facility in the country. Hopkins shares their field with the rest of the school, and no one else really competes.
Doesn't Ohio State have one?
Yes, but
facility like that we're in the
facilities like the locker room and everything.
Like soccer, men's, women's soccer, men's, women's lacrosse. Like
the field, yes, but not
training rooms their own, their film rooms their own, locker room, their own lounge. Like everything's women's lax only, which I think is so cool.
Wow. $27 million facility. Yeah. That's what it'll get you.
$27 million. Jeez.
Wow. Dude, who wins the national championship first? Clemson women's lacrosse or Ohio State men's? I'm going Clemson. I just want to be on the record right now.
I was Abby, do you know how's Ohio State women's doing this year?
They just broke into the top 20. I don't know.
Talk about a standard.
I think they're undefeated. I think they're undefeated, Mitch.
They are.
Yeah, they
I don't know.
Why? That shouldn't be a shock to anyone on this. It's like, they're 5-0. Like Maryland going to that championship. Yeah, Ohio State's undefeated.
No shock that Mitchell doesn't know what's going on in women's lax. The number one respecter of women over here is going to be a Buckeye.
I got to get back down to college.
Abby, I want to ask you right now. I was obsessed with the WLL all week long. You were one of my favorite players to watch, and I feel like there's so many big names. Like you see a girl like Emily Harrischuk who really started to push the limits as people saying, is she the best women's lacrosse player? I want you to tell me about the players that weren't highlighted at the WLL. Who's a player that everyone needs to know about right now?
Ooh, that's such a good question.
Thank you.
I got to think about, I mean, there were just so many. I love to see, obviously, a little bias here talking about my charm teammates, but Sydney Black had kind of her outbreak the game 1. And so I would say she was definitely talked about. I thought Grace Griffin on our team did an outstanding job. Like someone who is just, there's not many true two-way middies in the women's game anymore. Like we do run, there's a lot of runners now, kind of like similar to the men's game. And so she was always one of those just like true two-way middies that did an outstanding job on both ends of the field. Oh, I'm trying to think of, there's got to be others.
I'll help you out because I know obviously you want to say like one of your teammates and you don't want to disrespect anyone that you played against. So I'll give you an easier one. Name someone who wasn't there, who like retired, didn't want to get back in the field, who's like 27, 28 years old, and you're like, I got to get them back in the field. Who do you want to see there next year?
Taylor Cummings. We begged her. We asked her. We even when we had a player go down, your coaches can suit up.
Oh, really?
Yes. And we were like, please. She would dominate everyone. She could not play lacrosse for 5 years. I mean, even in practice, she's like 30% dummying a split dodge, and I'm like, you would have beat any one of us with that 30% split dodge. Like we were, when she first hopped on, we found out who our teammates were on a Zoom, like one by one. We all entered the Zoom room, and she entered, and I was like, please say she's playing. Please say she's playing.
That would have been legit.
I want to see her go Jackie Moon style semi-pro, be the owner, the coach, the GM, the best. Yeah, that's awesome. And then going back to the college game, is there one girl that's excelling in the college game that, you know, because we probably have a heavy male audience that a lot of the boys need to know about right now in the season?
Who's the girl you want to put on right now?
I need to buy stock in one female lacrosse player right now at the college level. Who am I buying?
This is so hard, and I'll definitely throw some names out there.
We need one name.
Okay.
I only have enough for one stock.
Okay, give me 10 seconds.
Okay.
Kev's
counting. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Is it Alexis Polina?
She's not there yet.
She's not there?
No, she's not.
Well, look, I was. Damn it! My woman respect ranking is going to go all the way down.
Who are we feeling?
Gosh, I think she's like kind of broken onto the scene a bit already, but Penn has a solid senior midfielder in Anna Brand. I played with her at the Team USA tryouts, and she's just like one of those solid 150% at all moments on the field.
There we go.
There's got to be I don't want to mispronounce her name, but
that's our specialty. You just hit it.
Yeah.
Mitch, when we were interviewed Emily Harris Chuck, I actually told him it was Horace Chuck, and he couldn't get it right. It was game over. He got to the point where if you rewatch the interview, you could just hear her go, "Hey, Chucky, what do you think about this during the game?" Chucky.
That's so funny. There's Natalie Shirtleff. No, I'm saying it so wrong. And I listened to it on the broadcast. Natalie Shirtleff on Clemson.
Okay.
Oh yeah, number 27. She's great.
Yeah, she's great. She's kind of been definitely their go-to force for every game this season.
Did you know, actually, fun fact, now you're bringing it up, I don't know if that's her or not, but Connor Schellenberger's cousin is a star at Clemson. I forget her name, but we can pop her up, and they kind of look identical a little bit.
Yeah, I also just want to say Kev just got like the number one respecter of women on the podcast.
Yeah, the fact that he just worked that name out.
I don't want to jump in here, but like, is Madison Taylor, is she like the front runner for Tewaaraton? I know she was a finalist last year. I feel like there's a big void right now with Izzy Skane going.
Let's say it how it is. Abby Bosco, give us your Tewaaraton pick and national championship pick. Go.
Yeah.
So I actually think that we had Charlotte, we had Izzy, but this face of women's lacrosse is very up in the air right now, and I don't think we've had that for a long time.
Abby, I feel like it's a men's side too. It's just like there was a backup of all the COVID guys and you had like a double graduating class. And now it's all young guys and girls all across college lacrosse.
Yeah, I do have to say Madison Taylor is outstanding. She's definitely the front runner, being a finalist last year. I think she's done nothing to prove that she doesn't deserve it this year already. I think she has over 20 goals or over 30 goals on like 5 games. But then you also have girls like Rachel Clark, who's pretty much automatic when she's dodging from anywhere above the 15-yard line. Them two for sure are going to be in my top 5.
Okay.
What about Emma Ward?
She's tricky. She's a tough one because you don't want to send the early slide to her because she will BTB assist it anywhere on the field. But then like you also don't want to just let her go 1v1 because she'll back foot rip it from the 12 if she has to.
Kind of like Dukes back in the day.
Yeah.
Back foot rip it. I've never heard that before.
Impressive.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. All right. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Last question here. One, I'm kind of interested to hear your opinion on, but where do you think the WLL is in 5 years? And then where do you want it to be in 5 years? Where do you think it's going to be, and where do you want it to be?
That's that question's a good one. I just think even where we are today, we're hopeful that, the PLL would start a women's side, and none of us thought it would be this year. We were like, give it 2 years, give it 3 years. It's not there yet. It's getting there. And I think the breakthrough of female athletes like that of Caitlin Clark, really, and honestly on the women's side, Charlotte, like they skyrocketed the trajectory of women's sports and women's lacrosse. And in 5 years, I hope that it is something that women can get out of college, and like that is their full-time job. They don't need to work a job, go do that on the weekends. And I think that if the ratings that I've heard from people who have texted me, called me, just talking to people that I run into with 6s is kind of sticks and just continues to grow, I think that's not a far reach.
Yeah, 100%. Well, sweet. Well, Abby, thanks for coming on the show. First female virtual guest, not the last. And keep tuning in, I guess, week by week, as we didn't know you were.
I will. Wait, I have an answer for a player under the radar. Don't think she's that under the radar, but Ashley Humphrey, UNC.
Okay. Yep. Heard that name a couple times. Okay, we'll be on the lookout for that. But Abby, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Abby Bosco, legend. We will be hearing that name for more years to come. But now let's hop into one of my favorite segments, Mitch's Mailbox, where you guys called the number on my Instagram story. Follow me on Instagram. And it's a good time to plug. Follow the show Instagram and TikTok, lacrosse.show on Instagram and TikTok. You guys called the number, and I said, leave your hottest take on a new venue for college lacrosse. Where do you guys want to see some crazy college lacrosse games being played? You guys left the voicemails. Producer Matty Ice, can you cue them up and get it rolling?
Hello, Mitchell. This is J.D. Harkey. I think it would be pretty cool to have a lacrosse game played on the deck of an aircraft carrier the way they've done the Carrier Classic in college basketball. Could be in a lot of different locations. Yeah, let's make that happen.
Unreal.
I love that. Let's do Army Notre Dame on the Carrier next fall. TLN sponsored classic. Dukes, just 50 yards.
Just have a chip.
You can flip the coin, be out there for the opening handshake, Dukes.
Just having a championship weekend. Just having a championship weekend.
There it is right now.
Beat me to that.
The Carrier Classic.
Can you imagine
that? I have a coin from Shootout for Soldiers because I played in it, and I have a special coin.
And didn't break his foot. But I think the biggest thing
Not there, Mitchell.
How I've heard some wild venues, stadiums. I've never heard that before. That would be unreal.
Can you fit a regulation lacrosse field on a Carrier?
Probably, and that ball hunt would be miserable. Do you know how many balls you miss? Especially if Ohio State's playing and Mitch is on there.
No, but let's actually think about this. if we could do a field, could we do any fans? Like they would be on the edge of like if they take a step back, they're swimming.
Did you see that? Did you see that lacrosse game? Kev, what was that lacrosse game in the Dome? It was Vermont and somebody, and the sidelines were legitimately like 1 inch away. Like there was one
From the
lacrosse.
wall.
I missed that. No, but that reminds
I
me.
want to
Of
say it was a Vermont game, like in a bubble, and there was nobody could be in the stadium because it was in a. Do you remember what I'm talking about, Hoagie?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, Dukes. They play on like that small indoor like bubble-ish type
Right.
thing. Like,
Yeah.
No sideline.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but nobody.
Exactly
there was no spectators, and there was no stream for it.
There's no fans allowed because they can't fit anyone else in there.
TV.
That's what it would have to be.
My concern too is like we're running after a shot in the end line. Like, are we gonna take a cannonball dive into the ocean, trying to get a possession for our team?
I'm not gonna lie.
Ohio State, we're diving for every end line. Someone might end up overboard. We're gonna have lifeguard unit there. I don't know. That could be cool though.
That would be unreal. I mean, how sick would that be?
I have a little rant that has nothing to do with this, but I just want to get this out there into the world. I think that any time that a player dives in college lacrosse to the end line, the ref doesn't really know who's closest, and he just gives it to the guy that dives. So I don't know why every player just doesn't dive.
That's a good point.
Like if you ever put on like your ref hat and you're like, like what would you do in this situation? Mostly everyone would be like, well, I'm just gonna give it to the guy that wants it more. 100%. If you really don't know,
I like it.
Yeah, thanks, Mitchell. Great to see you every week.
All right, next voicemail.
Hey, Mitch. I think a great venue for a matchup this year would be Highmark Stadium, Buffalo, New York. Maybe we could see like a upstate matchup like Syracuse versus someone. Maybe a cold weather game, or we could do later in the year. Thank you.
Wow, that could be sick.
That would be so sick.
Even if you could maybe double it up and have like a Syracuse game and then like bring the box thing in and have the Bandits play afterwards too. That could be sick.
Yeah, or like a scrimmage versus like a Toronto Canadian field team.
Yeah, just like what do they call it back in the day? Like not a round robin, but you have like 4 games in one day.
Jamboree.
Yeah.
and nobody could win it. Dude, I remember the first Jamboree I went to. I think we went like 4-0, not to brag, Mitch. I don't know if you ever did that, but we went 4-0. And I remember being like, what do you mean there's no championship? Like,
I know.
Like going to all these tournaments and having a Jamboree, I was like, I hate this.
Jamboree. God.
You want a Jamboree and a championship? That's too much excitement, man.
Yeah, it's too much. It should
I
be
like
so
the Highmark Stadium though, because that's
same.
one of the smaller NFL stadiums. I know they're building the new one up there in Buffalo, but that could be a great crowd. Obviously, upstate.
It'd be cool to even do like a Cuse in there, and then get like maybe the NLL Buffalo Bandits in there, and maybe like a top tier high school team. I don't know. I think
like a Cuse Cornell game could be sick. Even doubleheader.
I would love
Colgate Albany or something.
I know that Larkin Kemp has talked about it. I mean, I don't think he was like a revolutionary like idea, but it was a great one when we had the success of the 4 nations to do a USA Canada game for like All-Star Weekend. If All-Star Weekend ever went to Buffalo and you did USA versus Canada,
that would be
so sick. And did it at Buffalo, like that would be absolutely like imagine Josh Byrne going to Buffalo and getting booed at the stadium. That would be awesome.
God, that's crazy. All right, next voicemail.
Yo, what's up, boys? Long-time listener, second-time caller. Sweet. Thanks for not blocking my number after my Ivy League take.
Whoa!
Kind of crazy disrespect last time I called in, but here with another take. For the college lacrosse venue, I think it would be sick if some teams went overseas. I know the PLL goes to Japan. It would be pretty dope if 2 teams were able to play overseas, maybe Dublin, Ireland, something cool like that. But again, don't really appreciate the disrespect last week. Love what you guys are doing, though. Really cold take on Providence, though, Dukes. So,
what a legend. Hey,
this guy's back. He's not blocked.
Can you guys start putting your names in these voicemails, please? We want to start referring to you. That guy, we have no idea who he is, and sorry for the disrespect, but the take obviously wasn't great. But this would be sick. Obviously, we know the PLL is going to Japan here in a couple weeks. It's going to be sick to see that. I know I'm going to watch the RJ vlog to get behind the scenes of what that was like. But you think this will actually ever happen? Like, it would be unreal to see this happen. Obviously, we've seen it in other sports, but to see it in college lacrosse, like it would be unreal.
Yeah, I think
It'd be
it would
so
be
sick.
more. Well, thinking about it, I think right now we'd have more of maybe a fall ball type game rather than a regular season game, just because I feel like a lot of teams you've seen recently.
We already do it though. Like,
What?
I don't think it would be a big lift. Like, we went to Portugal to Ohio State. You've
Yeah.
seen Notre Dame go to
Mitch,
places after the national
my
championship.
only caveat to that is you're traveling. Let's say you're traveling all the way across the world, basically, to go to Europe, right? To play one of these games. You can't realistically do that in the middle of your season. I don't see teams flying to Spain, playing a game, and then flying home. You're going to go to Europe to spend a week or some time there and get team bonding, activities, kind of like these college lacrosse teams have done in the summers, going like how we went to Portugal, Mitch, for a week and a half, did a couple scrimmages and stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't know logistically in the middle of the season right now, like a game next week in London, England. Like, are we going to fly all the way across the country? I love the concept. I love the idea. Just from a practicality standpoint, a budget standpoint, and like in the middle of the season, I don't know how we'd make that work.
It would be awesome to see like the PLL be like, hey, week 6 we're going to Dublin, and week 7 we're going to play in the UK.
Love that idea.
Somewhere in London. I think professionally is probably closer to happening than in college. If it was going to happen in college, I think it would have to be like the season opener, and you'd have to make it like right after the winter semester. I don't even know how logistically it would work, but college, I don't even think it's possible. I think professionally, that would be sweet. Maybe when we get owners and stuff.
Be so sick.
And also, I think that like we'll just podcasters. No one wants to talk about the podcasters, but I do think that if they do that, how do you do an event like that without a podcast on site? Right? That was the second question.
The amount of people that have came up to me, and even since the start of season 2 of the show, says we need to get you guys live on set. Some of these college games, essentially doing college game day for men's lacrosse. I mean, we need to make it happen. I mean, we're doing it for the PLL. We need to make it happen for D1. That's going to be a big goal, and I want to hit that potentially next year or in season 4 of this bad boy. But that's going to wrap up
Notre Dame versus Fairleigh Dickinson.
That's right down the road. That's right down the road for me. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I might have to bring the podcast and equipment down there and get a live stream of the FDU boys.
I want to see if Fairleigh Dickinson has a lacrosse team.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, you research that. We're going to walk into quarter 4 of this bad boy. We got start, bench, cut. Segment that you guys absolutely loved in the first episode. We're going to keep it going. We got a different thing. I'm going to rattle off to you guys and see what your guys' thoughts are. What are you laughing at?
3-1, baby.
Jesus. That's terrible. All right, let's talk about it. I'm going to go start, bench, cut. Dukes, I want you to start us off here. Ready? And then we'll go Dukes, Kev, and then we'll finish with Hoagie. Start, bench, cut. Iconic college lacrosse teams.
Okay.
2022 Maryland, 2024 Notre Dame, 2006 Virginia, and you can throw in there, you can pick 1990 Syracuse.
Wow. I'm going to start 2024 Notre Dame. I think that was the most pure run at a national championship we have ever seen. When you talk about 2022 Maryland, undefeated, gauntlet, beat Notre Dame. But again, I know people are going to come at me, but that has an asterisk for me for the fact that Duke and Notre Dame were kept out of that NCAA tournament.
That is ridiculous to
maybe one of the weakest Final Fours we've seen in recent history, Mr. Hogan.
God, he keeps bringing that up like,
there's the ACC.
Look back, the ACC bias, Hoagie. If you look back at the last 20 national championships, about 17 are from the ACC.
Yeah, but
you got Loyola and Maryland, Denver. That's it.
Season, Duke and you could argue Notre Dame didn't deserve to get in, so we can't just Sharpie them in because their name is Duke to put them in there. Duke would have lost.
The RPI said otherwise.
Donna didn't.
Exactly, Hoagie.
Donna put the Buckeyes in. That's all.
I'm going to start Notre Dame because I'm a homer. I'm going to bench Maryland, and then I'm going to cut 1990 Syracuse. Why? Because I wasn't alive. I don't care. And about 10 people played lacrosse back then. No, I love ragging. They're playing against plumbers. People got so mad last year when I was just like, dude, Gary Gate played against plumbers and accountants. People were like, they still do.
God, that's crazy. All right, Kev, you hit it next.
All right. First of all, Mitch, you can't do start, bench, cut with 4 items. You need 3. So you understand the segment.
And the whole thing.
And 2, Dukes, Notre Dame had the least pure run of these teams that were mentioned. They're the only team with a loss, meaning automatic cut. 2024 Maryland or Notre Dame, you're out.
Kev.
I'm gonna bench the 2022 Maryland Terps, best team of the past decade. I'll give them that credit, but I'm the only one, I think, who's old enough to remember this here, but 06 Virginia was on a different level, man. Undefeated, 17-0, 16 goals per game. They were beating teams by 8 goals per game. They had 7 40-point guys. This is before the shot clock, guys. They were doing things that were completely different than anyone had really seen other than what Syracuse had done in the Dome. This was completely different. Ben Rubior, Matt Ward, Danny Gladding, greatest attack line of all time. Go back and watch the 480p YouTube highlights and try to learn something, guys.
Kev, I love that. As Kev Pehlke was a legend at UVA, I grew up watching the Wahoos, and I remember this vividly. We had the CD in the back of the Denali watching that bad boy, that championship run. So it's a little special place in my heart. But Hoagie, I'll let you go. Just one off.
Yeah, and for me, obviously, kind of like the rest of us, 1990 Syracuse, really have no idea what about it. We didn't see it near with 2006 Virginia either. I'm like 5 years old playing fiddlestick in the front lawn. For me, I'm starting 2022 Maryland. I think that team is the best college lacrosse team of all time, and I will take them against anyone all time. I don't care about talent. I don't care about, on paper they had more athletes. To me, if that 2022 Maryland team stepped on the field against anyone in the history of college lacrosse, I would take that 2022 Maryland team. Top to bottom, goaltending, McNaney, face-offs, Luke Weirman, Logan Wisnauskas, Keegan Kahn, who else? Roman Puglisi,
Danny Mull,
Brett Makar, all these guys, Ajax Zapatello. That team was so stacked, so deep. They had a swagger to them. They won every game in front of them. They went undefeated. And you got to talk about, too, they almost went undefeated the year prior and won the national championship as well with that same core. 2022 Maryland, my clear starter. I'm going to bench 2024 Notre Dame. That team, again, uber talented as well. They did have the loss. I'm not going to hold the loss too hard against them. And then I'm going to have to cut either Virginia 2006 or 1990 Qs.
Well, which one?
I'll take 2006 Virginia over 90.
You can't do that.
Yeah, so I'm cutting 2006 Virginia.
I will also include that part of the Notre Dame thing will be 10 years from now. I think when we look back at the makeup of this roster, we'll be like, holy hell, this team was stacked. When you look at like Sean Light, you might say Jordan Faison in the NFL and all this. Like, there's so many factors to this. How many PL players are potentially on the roster? So it's one of those things that'll age like fine wine.
Mitch, Mitch, what do you got?
I actually have the same as you, Hoagie. Same sort of thing. Playing Maryland 22 live. Truly agree. 2024 Notre Dame, wildly successful. I think 2022 just tops them. And then I think 06 Virginia is cut. But 1990 is, I'm in a different spectrum where I think there was great lacrosse players, but the talent, like it wasn't as spread out as all these other teams where I think they probably had good games against ACC teams and that was it.
Any idea where the trophy is, by the way? Where do we think it is?
I don't know. I've asked Paul Carcaterra that once or twice. And I don't know
in Clark's basement?
I don't know if I really got a serious
Lucky Clark didn't give it away by accident during the COVID broadcast. And when they had to do the broadcast from the house, he could have had the trophy behind him by accident. Forgot to take it down.
That's
you think that Maryland gets a little bit of an asterisk though, because I mean it's not like Notre Dame got to play Ohio State twice every year.
Dude, Scott.
Dukes.
When are we starting the chant? Take Dukes off the show.
Where's that tournament run?
Get the mannequin ready, baby. Get the mannequin. I don't care. Get the mannequin.
Get that mannequin back. Get
the mannequin. Maybe it can help you with some social clips.
I love it. All right, that's gonna wrap up episode 6. It's going to be live on TLN 9 a.m. on Wednesday. Each Wednesday this year, that's when we're hitting. And follow Lacrosse.show for more insight. We will see you guys next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Peace.